You know Gray Bar for electrical parts, but there's one more thing you may not be thinking of us for that can help maximize your next project's total value. Our pre-project planning services are designed to help you win the bid, save on labor costs, and keep your installers productive across your entire build. The sooner you call us, the better. Because when we're there from the beginning, we can anticipate your needs and help you solve problems before they become problems. Yep, Gray Bar does that.
I've been on a different style podcast kick as of late, Sam, and I don't know how it's going to translate to my mentality in this podcast, but I feel like I'm going to be a lot more suspicious, a lot more investigative. Because I've been listening to like a lot of true crime podcasts lately, and now I'm basically just a gumshoe.
So everything we're going to be talking about today has an ulterior motive.
Everything comes with a tint of suspicion. Nobody is without suspicion in this world.
And we have to get to the bottom of literally everything.
So say I. Yeah, literally everything.
I'm in New York right now, or am I?
Or are you? You know how many things happen in New York that go unsolved all the time? Huh?
Hopefully not too many. I live here. I want to believe that the police department is more competent than that.
Do yourself a favor, Sam. Don't look it up.
Yeah, that's true.
No, I for whatever reason, I don't know, the last few weeks, and it's kind of the point where I'm wondering, like, at what point is it concerning that I'm just listening to all these true crime Like, I on Netflix, I did, like, Making a Murderer. I did The Keepers, which I thought was way better than Making a Murderer. If you have not watched The Keepers yet on Netflix, incredible. And it's made by the same people. But then I had a whole bunch of people recommend the podcast My Favorite Murder to me, which is just these two hilarious comedians, and they sit around and for like the first half of the show is just these two ladies talking about like anything and everything in their lives, which is hysterical. And then they get into telling you all of these like creepy murder stories from like years past. But it's very well done. It's a very interesting podcast. But then they recommended one called Atlanta Monster, which is about back in the late 70s, early 80s. There were a whole bunch of kids who went missing in Atlanta, and their bodies were found, and they ended up pinning it on one guy, but under very kind of tenuous circumstances. So that one is still ongoing. But then in that, there was a mention of a previous podcast from the same host called Up and Vanished, which is about this woman who disappeared in Georgia in 2005. They've never seen or heard from her again. It's a whole thing on that. So everything is suspicious. Everything is suspicious to me.
Well, if I may throw another one in there, it's
Who's
not
the black
crime.
pickup? Who had the black pickup? Anyway.
It's not true crime, but it actually made me rethink what I thought I knew about podcasts and what podcasts can be.
Okay.
It's called Limetown. Have you heard of that one?
No, I have not.
Limetown is...
Lime as in lime like you put in a Pacifico?
Sure, yeah. I was going to say as in lemon and lime, like a Sprite drink. But sure, we'll go with your version.
That's way more mature.
Yeah. Or immature, I guess, if I'm still thinking about Sprite.
Oh, sure.
But no, it's about this town that was set up for a company, and then it completely disappears off the map.
Whoa.
And I thought it was true. The way it was explained to me was like, here's this thing about this thing that happened. And so I started listening to it, and I was like, how do we now talk about this? How did this never like reach the media? What happened? Who screwed up? Okay. And it was kind of like a War of the Worlds situation, but for the modern day.
Okay.
I realized later that it didn't actually happen, but I was so sucked into the story that I wanted it to be true, and I wanted to get to the bottom of it. So it's kind of like what radio plays used to be,
right.
They can still be in this new podcast format. So
man, podcasts it's a very interesting, and we're still like kind of in the Wild West with podcasts of like what exactly, you know, the rules are for this medium. And obviously we stick to a much more escapist format, we'll say, than discussing, you know, unsolved murder mysteries and stuff. But man, podcasts are cool. This is a cool era because you have, you know, you can have narratives and stories and stuff that are easily accessible to you that, you know, even 15 years ago you never would have had any exposure to, and I think it's pretty cool. Or the flip side of that is that you have to listen to me for an hour every week.
But you get to choose that.
Yeah, that's true. It's your fault.
We didn't have to get radio space and all that kind of stuff. It is the Wild West, and that
is definitely true.
Land is vast and wild and open and free. And
we're just homesteading out here.
Yeah, exactly.
For the most part.
At a certain point, we just get this spot on your podcast feed.
Right.
We just plant it, and we're there forever.
Right. Yeah, so, just keep your eyes open, everybody. Anything, you have any information about minor league baseball, please come forward and contact us. We'll be listening. So with that, welcome into the latest episode of the Show Before the Show podcast, which is episode number 148. Sam had an interesting fun fact in the subject line of the email today. Dunbar's number states that people can only maintain stable social relationships with at most 148 others. I'm 32 now, and all my friends are married or have kids, so I'm way under that. So that's fine.
I think it just makes those of us who don't have 148 friends on Facebook feel a whole lot better.
Yeah, it could be. Like, you don't really know these people. Liars.
It's okay because you're not supposed to.
Exactly. So hey, thanks for tuning in wherever you found us. We appreciate it. iTunes, Google Play, the Stitcher app. We're I believe on something called Pocket Casts that I discovered recently. Somebody told me about. Yeah, you can give us a rating and a review and a subscription, and we would be so obliged. And with that, we'll get into Three Strikes. Every week we tackle the three biggest topics in minor league baseball in a segment we call Three Strikes. And strike one this week, Sam, is some very unfortunate news from the Houston Astros organization, where, according to one Sam Dykstra at MILB.com, quote, Astros right-hander Forrest Whitley has been suspended 50 games for violating the minor league drug prevention and treatment program. The Office of the Commissioner of Baseball announced Wednesday morning. The exact nature of the violation was not disclosed. Forrest Whitley is the number 9 overall prospect in the entire game of baseball, and a guy who not only is the top prospect in his own system, but really looks like the next big thing in a system that just produced the World Series champions. This comes at a crucially bad time for Forrest Whitley. I mean, he climbed to Double-A last year, made 4 appearances there, an ERA of 1.84. Yeah, he only threw 14 2/3 at Double-A, but combined between full season Class A Advanced, and Double-A, 23 outings, 18 starts, 2.83 ERA, 143 strikeouts to 34 walks in 92 1/3 innings, and now he's gone for 50 games. Your initial reaction to this?
Yeah, I feel like there are 2 ways to approach this story. One, which Tyler, you touched on there, is that this is an unfortunate, thing that happened. Forrest Whitley might have been the pitcher I was most excited to see in the minor leagues coming up this year. He's the number 2 pitching prospect in the game, according to MLB.com, only behind Shohei Ohtani, who we all think is going to be in the majors with the Angels. So Whitley, for all intents and purposes, was the top pitching prospect in minor league baseball. Now we're not going to see him until late May. What does that do for his development? Well, that pushes him back. That's, those are innings he's not going to be able to get. He might be throwing off to the side and that whole thing, but he can't pitch in live games, and that hurts him a little bit. Is it incredibly tough for him? No, not necessarily. This is a guy coming out of high school. This is just going to be his second full season. He only threw 92 1/3 innings last year, not because of injury, but because the Astros wanted to be cautious with him. Yes, they were pushing him aggressively, but they also didn't want to tax his arm too much. They like him so much, they don't want him getting hurt very quickly and pushing him to the limit. So this is kind of, I don't want to call it a natural buffer to keep his innings down this year, but in terms of what's the effect going to be on him long term, I don't think it's going to be that big a deal. The second part to this is just kind of the weird nature of the suspension announcement. Normally when we get suspension announcements, this was first broken by Buster Olney, who, a couple minutes before we all got the email in our inboxes from the commissioner's office, tweeted out that Forrest Whitley had been banned 50 games. And when you hear 50 games, you kind of assume that it's a drug of abuse, because that's, by the letter of the law, what a drug of abuse suspension gets is 50 games. If it's a performance-enhancing drug, those suspensions usually go higher. So it didn't seem like it was going to be a PED issue. But the email that we were sent about the suspension didn't name anything about what exactly he was suspended for. It just said he received a 50-game suspension without pay for a violation. As Tyler read from my story, I didn't want to speculate on what that means, and I can't say now for sure one way or another whether it was a drug or abuse, whether it was what it could have been. So we don't know exactly what Whitley tested. We don't even know if he tested positive. Maybe he missed a test. There could be any reason he violated the thing here. So I don't. I initially tweeted out this morning that drug of abuse usually equals 50 games. It shouldn't be that hard to connect the dots, but they usually announce when they say, for a positive test of a drug of abuse. That wasn't the case here.
And for PEDs, we even usually get the specific drug that was tested positive for.
Exactly. So it's a very interesting case here. I wish we had some answers. I know one San Antonio broadcaster reported something about it being a stimulant that Whitley took to help with a long drive coming back from a baseball tournament. I haven't seen that confirmed anywhere. He claimed a close source to Whitley. Based on that, Whitley himself put out a statement saying, "I made a mistake and take full responsibility for my actions. I want to apologize to the Astros organization, my family, and those closest to me. I will learn from this mistake and continue striving to be the best player that I can be." The Astros said, they were disappointed by it as well, but it's not throwing things off completely with them. It's just an unfortunate incident, and what we all expect will be a pretty long career for Forrest Whitley. While it will stink for April and then most of May while he's sitting on the bench for the Corpus Christi Hooks, by August, September, if he's still healthy and still churning out the results we all think he can be, this will just kind of be a small footnote on his season.
Yeah, and that's, ultimately the hope for a young guy who's only 20 years old and that it turns into just a little speed bump. But, it makes you think a little bit about somebody like Alex Reyes. And granted, Alex Reyes had a shoulder issue that was prior to his suspension, but things just started to snowball for him. It was the shoulder in 2015, drug suspension in 2016, came back, made the major league roster for the first time, and then last year, getting ready in 2017, blows out his elbow, has Tommy John surgery. Obviously, those two things are not related, a drug suspension for a drug of abuse and Tommy John surgery or a shoulder issue, that type of thing. But you hope that it doesn't become a pattern for somebody who, everybody deserves second chances. 20-year-old kids sometimes make terrible decisions. And for Forrest Whitley, you hope that this is, like he said, something that he can learn from, grow from, and make into an asset going forward. But tough news for the Houston Astros organization for a guy they were very high on and will be without for the first third of the 2018 season. Strike two, Sam, this week. The Tampa Bay Rays continue a rebuilding movement that has led to a lot of familiar faces shipped out of Tampa Bay, and they did that a little bit more this week. Tampa Bay acquiring 8th-ranked Yankees prospect Nick Solak and the 4th-ranked prospect in the Arizona Diamondback system, Anthony Banda, in a 3-team deal. Rays outfielder Steven Souza goes to Arizona. D-backs infielder Brandon Drury goes to New York. Arizona also picked up a prospect at number 14, Yankees prospect formerly, Taylor Widener. The Rays thing is probably the most interesting angle of all of this, and to get two guys who are highly regarded, and Nick Solak and Anthony Banda, what do you make of this from Tampa Bay's side?
Yeah, I mean, this just kind of fits with the theme of the offseason for Tampa Bay, and we'll get a little bit more into that in strike three, spoiler alert. But them trading Steven Souza, that opens up another spot in their outfield. They get 2 prospects back that we know of right now. They also get 2 players to be named later from the D-backs. I'm going to be really interested to see who those 2 prospects are, because it's the D-backs, and the D-backs don't have a great system right now. It's not like they're going to be giving up Haven Smith for Steven Souza, as good as Steven Souza could be. The D-backs are really hoping they can just plug him in, and that'll hurt less with the loss of JD Martinez to the Red Sox a couple days ago. But the Rays, they're trying to get as much talent as they can basically right now, which is exciting for us because it just means more talent in the minors. Adding Banda to that AAA rotation maybe is going to be really exciting. He had a really down year last year. A lot of that you can kind of put on being in Reno. He did get calls up to the majors, didn't do so well there either. So his stock is certainly coming down a little bit. But a lot of people still think he can be a number 4 or number 5 starter, pitching from the left side, probably going to start out in Durham. So that Durham team that just won a AAA national championship could get even deeper in terms of the rotation. You put Banda next to Honeywell, next to Yarborough, next to Chirinos, who is also in that discussion. That rotation is just going to be sick for maybe all of April and a couple weeks in May, seeing how things shake out this spring. Solak, a really good hitting second baseman. I know people loved him coming out of Louisville in terms of his makeup. He's a really fun interview, really engaging interview, really trying to get better at his craft. Ended up last year at AA Trenton. So he he's got an outside shot of kind of entering that mix for Durham at the beginning of the year, but put him at second base, and now all of a sudden you've got kind of a future of an infield already in place in terms of the upper levels in Tampa. Jake Bowers, I know they've played him a lot in the outfield. He can play first base. Solak at second. Willie Adames at short. And Christian Arroyo at third. Maybe he's also a former shortstop. These are all prospects. You put them in one infield, that's not only a prospect-laden infield, but that's an infield built to compete already. So that makes that Rays system even more interesting. We're going to be doing our farm system rankings. Those are going to start coming out next week. Position players in terms of the Rays, I think they're really stacked. Adding Solak into that, and again, waiting to see what happens with the players to be named later, only makes that system better and deeper and a little bit more interesting. I don't think second base is exactly somewhere they were specifically deep at. But obviously, this doesn't happen in a vacuum. We're talking about the minor league portion of this trade because that's our job, but it goes a little deeper. We'll get into that here in a second.
And that is strike three. The Tampa Bay Rays this offseason has been so interesting in what they've done to reshape not only the major league roster, but obviously the minor league side. If you are a Rays prospect right now, if you're the Brent Honeywells of the world, the prospects that are especially nearing the major league level, how does this make you feel? Because you kind of know the stakes when you join an organization like that that's a smaller market organization and needs to be constantly retooling in order to stay competitive. Are you excited that you've likely got opportunities coming to you, or upset that eventually if you make it successfully, you're going to be a trade piece yourself?
All right, so let's just set up the scenario here a little bit first before I take sides a little bit on this. These are the major league players that the Rays have lost or seem set to lose at the very least, based on 2017 contributions. Mind you, this was a team that went 80-82 during the regular season, so they were about 500 in a very good division, obviously, with the Red Sox and Yankees both pushing for playoff contention last year. 80-82, slightly below 500, but that's still only 5 games out of a playoff spot. Normally, when you're 5 games out of a playoff spot, you're thinking, okay, what do I need to do to close that gap? And yet, here are the players the Yankees have lost, or the Rays have lost. Corey Dickerson, who they just designated for assignment. There's a major league show. This would be a strike in itself. Right now, that's just interesting that they DFA one of their better hitters. Evan Longoria, face of the franchise, they've traded to the Giants. Jake Odorizzi, they recently traded to the Twins. Steven Souza, who we've already talked about, he goes to the D-backs. Tommy Hunter, a reliever, he goes to the Phillies in free agency. Logan Morrison, Alex Cobb, and Lucas Duda are all free agents who have yet to sign. Highly unlikely that they're going to head back to Tampa Bay. They're going to want bigger contracts than the Rays are willing to give. This is a team that has lost the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 11th best players on their team, according to Baseball Reference for last year. This is a team that doesn't seem particularly interested in trying to close that gap so much as they try to close the payroll, which is really disappointing because somebody like Souza still had 3 years of control. This is not a guy who was, entering a free agency year or anything like that. He's still relatively cheap to, I mentioned Arizona's going to try to use him to replace JD Martinez. This isn't a $125 million player we're talking about here. It's a guy with just some arbitration years coming up. And to see that is really disheartening as just a baseball fan. Now, to go back to the original question about prospects, you're Corey Dickerson, or you're Brent Honeywell, and you see Jake Odorizzi exit the rotation. All right, cool. That means there's a spot open. Brent Honeywell did really well for Durham at the end of last year. Probably should have been in the majors anyway by September. Didn't get that call. We all saw him retweet everybody under the sun whenever somebody got a call up in September. So kind of hinting that he wanted one too. Didn't come. So the fact that there's a rotation spot open is obviously great in the short term. But it's tough to be in a system that once you get good enough, once you get just expensive enough, a team is going to deal you. And there's no real way you can go about that. Like, unless you're a free agent, you don't get to choose where you're traded to, or unless you have a no trade clause, obviously, you don't get to choose where you go. So the idea of just being an asset until you're good enough that they can spin you off somewhere else must be really disheartening. Now, that's a motivating factor for you. Maybe do as well as you can, be as good as you can super early, so that you are traded elsewhere and you get a good return in that whole thing, and you become somebody other teams want. But the idea that you're working towards this goal of being a major leaguer and being a major leaguer only to be traded elsewhere is just not a fun experience, especially when you see other players, an Aaron Judge, a Cody Bellinger, put in all that work and then are valued well enough to be plugged into a major league lineup and trusted for a good team and to carry a good team into the playoffs. So I can't imagine it's very fun right now for guys like Bowers and Adames and Honeywell. But, again, it could be a motivating factor for them to listen. I'm going to get my chance maybe earlier than some other guys, and I have to do as well as I can with it so I can find another spot somewhere else.
It's a very interesting situation from the perspective of a player, even from the perspective of a fan, but, kind of a somewhat unique setup in baseball, and that the Rays are comfortable as a front office and an administration being an identity of a team that needs to continually be making moves in order to sustain itself. And if you're a prospect, sometimes it comes with some difficulties, but, the ultimate goal for all these guys is to get to the big leagues, play as well as possible, and whatever happens, whatever cards fall from there are the ones that fall. So, another interesting offseason in Tampa. We'll go with a couple of foul balls this week, Sam. Really all Seattle Mariners related, and the big story, at least news-wise, Kyle Lewis, yet again, bothered by a knee issue, underwent a scope about 10 days ago, quote-unquote. That's due to a Monday quote, or that's from a Monday quote from Mariners general manager Jerry DiPoto, who said that Kyle Lewis would likely be out 4 to 6 weeks. Lewis was terrific in his first pro season back in 2016 after he went to the Mariners with the 11th overall pick, but then was injured in July of that year, tore his right ACL, and ever since then hasn't really been the same. I know I talked to him a little bit when he got down to the Arizona Fall League last year, said he was feeling great, and then that injury flared up after just 2 games in the AFL. So Kyle Lewis, it looks like right now, is going to be starting once more behind the 8 ball. And also another really good story up on the site about Braden Bishop, who is an outfielder in the Mariners organization and a guy we've talked about from time to time on the show. His mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease back in 2014. Susie is her name, and he, a University of Washington product, since then has been as much advocate as he has been baseball player, and this year put together a really cool initiative, I guess, for him that a lot of other players have joined on to try to donate money and get some more attention to the cause of Alzheimer's. But Sam, take us through these couple of stories and another news item from the Mariners organization.
Yeah, you definitely feel for both scenarios. Kyle Lewis, as promising as he was on the show a couple of years ago after he was drafted. I think he was a Golden Spikes winner, incredibly promising college career, but not at a big time program. So I was really interested to see how he was going to make the transition to pro ball. Started out okay, and then knee issues just, can wreck a player, and especially a toolsy one like him. This seems to be just a knee scope, so it's only going to be 4 to 6 weeks that he's out. But, for a guy who continually has knee issues and needs to be quick and needs to be speedy and needs to, have a lot of torque on those knees, that's upsetting. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Hopefully he comes back and plays a full season. Would love to see nothing more from him than 100-plus games. Braden Bishop, you mentioned, we're all pulling for him this spring. I think, it's tied to spring performance. It's something like he's going to give a couple bucks for every hit he gets and all that kind of stuff. So normally we don't root for players in spring training. We're rooting for stories and that whole thing. But what he's done has been really fun to follow. And our colleague Danny Wild talked to him and a couple other people tied with his initiative. So do check that story out. Also in that Mariners organization, just really quickly, I did a story last week for Toolshed. Ryan Healy, who was acquired by the Mariners from the A's to kind of be their first baseman, he's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks because of a hand issue. That opens up a spot for Mike Ford, who was the feature in Toolshed. He was a Rule 5 pick, really head-scratching Rule 5 pick when it happened, not because of his own performance before that. This is a guy who constantly puts up OBPs above 400, has some good pop, hit 20 home runs last year between AA and AAA in the Yankee system. But he's a left-handed bat. He's at first base. They had already acquired Healy. They already had Dan Vogelback in the system. So to put Ford into that mix just felt like a carbon copy of some stuff they already had.
Future American curling champion Dan Vogelback.
Dan Vogelback, yes,
forgot
of course.
To mention.
That's a recall from last week. But to get Ford and to be a Rule 5 pick, he has to stick in the majors all year. That just seemed weird. So I talked a little bit to him about what the opportunity now means that Healy is out and he's going to get a lot more playing time in the spring. And also he talked to me about how he did some workouts in the winter in the Orlando area with Ben Gamble, Mariners outfielder, and new Mariners outfielder D. Gordon, acquired from the Marlins. They're going to be moving him to center field. All three of them worked on the outfield spots. Ford being a first baseman, not typically seen as a corner outfielder. I don't think he's even played there yet in the minors. So that's an interesting development to watch this spring. That caught on a little bit with Mariners Twitter. So Mariners system not as loaded as it once was because of a lot of Jerry Dipoto trades, but some still interesting stories in that farm system. So check those all out on the site now.
All up at MILB.com. That'll do it for 3 strikes and 1 foul ball for this week's episode number 148 of the show before the show. Coming up, we're going to the Atlanta Braves system and the 97th ranked overall prospect and all of the minor leagues according to MLB Pipeline, third baseman Austin Riley, who joins the show from Big League Camp in Florida next. The Atlanta Braves organization is where we find our guest for this week's episode number 144 of the Minor League Baseball podcast, and that is Austin Riley, who is the number 97 ranked overall prospect in baseball according to MLB Pipeline coming into 2018, and a third baseman in the Braves system. Austin, welcome, man. Where are you right now? Are you in Florida? Are you getting ready, or what's your track for the next couple of weeks?
I'm in Florida right now at Big League Camp. We worked out this morning, so just kind of hanging low this afternoon.
So being a big league camp guy for an organization that is loaded with prospects right now, as we all know, that system has come along so strongly over the last few years. But for you to get a taste of the major league side now and to be doing this, a couple of weeks before the rest of the minor league guys, what is the biggest thing that stood out to you so far about being there?
Really just kind of the atmosphere. All the guys, they're all, chasing a job, and you can see that the work ethic is above anything I've ever seen. Guys are getting there before the sun comes up, and they're there till it goes down, and that's been the biggest thing for me. And I'm just glad I got the opportunity to be a part of it.
Awesome. For somebody like you coming off of a great season and going into a season in which you could take some real big steps toward the upper minors and beyond, what's been the biggest point of emphasis for you over the offseason and going into spring training, knowing that you're going to get a chance to, be around these big league guys? What are you working on right now? What are you bouncing off of some of the maybe higher up guys and guys in the major league side of the organization around you?
Definitely falling towards Ron Washington defensive wise. We've been working with him past couple of days, early work with the glove, and I think that's going to be the biggest key for me in my next game going forward is improving my defense and and then just allowing the bat to continue to progress there.
And speaking of being in big league camp, when we knew this interview was coming up, I was doing a little research. I just searched Austin Riley on Twitter to see what would come up, and the first tweet that I saw was this from Kevin McAlpin. Pretty cool scene this morning in the Braves clubhouse. Chipper Jones sitting at a table chatting with Mike Soroka, Austin Riley, Kyle Wright, and Josh Graham. Obviously, Chipper Jones, now a Hall of Famer, was always going to be a Hall of Famer, but also a third baseman. What are you guys talking about in those chats just to have him in the clubhouse and around, but especially you as a third baseman?
Just being able to pick his brain about anything, whether it's, whatever, what his approach was, when he was at bat, or what got him ready defensively, every game. But, just being able to be around that kind of knowledge, a Hall of Famer, it's super cool. He's a hunter. I'm a hunter. We talk about, not only baseball, but hunting. It's just, kind of eases everything, and, just really, really, really awesome to be around a guy like him.
And how long have you been able to chat with him? I mean, you were a high pick going back to 2015, and being a third baseman, I imagine the Braves probably put you guys in touch fairly early in your career. I mean, how far back does your guys' relationship go?
Met him a couple times when I first got drafted, but really didn't get to talk to him a whole lot until last year. I got to go up a couple of times with the big league squad whenever we'd travel or whatever. And that's really kind of where we kind of made our relationship there. And from then on, it's been awesome, just really getting to talk to him and see what he has to say.
All right. So one thing I want to talk about is your second half last year. You moved up to Double-A Mississippi second half of the year, and it seemed to really take off. You had a 718 OPS in Florida with the Fire Frogs, and then a 900 OPS at Mississippi, in the Southern League. Making that jump, that some people say that's the biggest jump in the minors. I think getting out of the FSL probably helped as well. But what were you able to do at Double-A that you weren't quite doing yet at Class A Advanced? What improvements did you make as the season went on?
To me, the Florida State League is probably one of the toughest leagues, I know and have definitely been in. Just because it's so hot, guys are Double-A material, but maybe not have the command pitching wise. And so whenever you get to kind of Double-A, they get that command, and you kind of have that confidence that they're going to be around the zone. So then you can really focus on an approach, focus on a plan, and to me that was the biggest jump from high to Double-A.
Awesome. As a guy who is a guy born in Tennessee, and you graduated high school in Mississippi, drafted in the CBA round in 2015, the Braves are like a regional team compared. So many teams are a state team or a city team, but the Braves kind of call the entirety of the South their own. Were you a guy who grew up a Braves fan? I mean, Chipper Jones, obviously, you spoke about, and the fact that he was kind of an icon and was a local guy as well. But what was your baseball fandom like when you were growing up?
Definitely watched the Braves. Like I said, Chipper was one of the ones that I always kept my eye on. But really just baseball in general. I love the game. I don't know what I'd be doing if I didn't have the game. So, but definitely, all the organizations, they're right there in the South. My family always was to come to I know when I was in Mississippi, they come to every homestand. So I mean, just having that, the family there and friends, and just being able to experience that with them, it just makes it that much more special.
You had kind of a couple different roads that you could have taken into pro ball, being a two-way guy in high school as a hitter and a defensive player and also a pitcher. But I know the things that I've read said that wanting to be a guy who could swing the bat and play in the field was something that you were focused on doing as a professional. What was the discussion like with organizations, or at least the feel that you got from organizations going into the draft back in 2015 about how you were regarded on each side?
They definitely liked me more as a pitcher. But, I like pitching, but I love playing every day, in the field. So that was kind of my look on it. Do I want to pitch every fifth day, or do I want to play every day? And, that's kind of how I chose. I backed out as a pitcher and told, everybody that I was going to be, go in as a third baseman or position player. And, just kind of took that chance. Whoever wanted me, if they wanted me as a position player, and just blessed that the Braves have given me the opportunity to do what I love to do, and that's play the position. And
obviously that's pretty well served you so far. I want to touch on the Arizona Fall League. You got 17 games with Peoria back there a couple months back. Did extremely well, hitting 300 with an OPS over 1,000, 6 homers in 17 games. What did that experience do for you going into this big league camp, going into what is, could be a big year for you starting at Double-A? What was it like to end 2017 on that note and head into 2018 with some momentum like that?
Well, it just, build confidence for me when we do start playing games, because that's some of the best pitching, prospects out there right now, and best hitters, and being around that kind of elite level talent for a month and a half, however long I was out there, it just being able to pick pick different guys' brains and see what kind of clips for them, and there's really kind of put myself out there, trying to show that I got a chance to play the game, and really that was the biggest key is just building that confidence to heading into spring.
And as I mentioned, you had 6 homers, which was second in the AFL, only to Ronald Acuna, who had 7. Alex Jackson also hit 5 homers for that Peoria team. How competitive were you guys as a trio and just as a team, all going for that home run or lead? Because I know all fall long, it seemed like the 3 of you were kind of trading spots, trying to get in the lead in the AFL. How competitive was the atmosphere just among the Braves prospects?
Oh, it was. It's kind of that atmosphere in the AFL it's really laid back. So I mean, it's we were all joking about it. Me and Jackson, during season, we're messing with each other. Who would hit one? We'd be like, "Come on, where's yours at?" Stuff like that. But of course, Acuna's got to top us off. That dude's a stud, going to be in the big leagues for a long time. But I swear I was up on him by 2. I was up on him by 1, and then one game he ended up hitting 2, like towards the end, and I was like, all right, well, it doesn't look like I'm going to lead it anymore. So, but it's just fun, being on 3 guys that were able to do that on the same team. That I think that's pretty special, and just shows what the Braves organization is about. What's to come in the future.
Austin, on the topic of power, we hear so often about, especially high school guys, that coming into pro ball, power oftentimes is the last thing to come around. You kind of learn how to hit, you learn how to spray the ball around the field, and then you learn how to take it out. For you, power has never really been a struggle. You have 12 homers in your debut season in 60 games, 20 homers in 2016, 129 games with Rome, 20 homers last year in 129 games. What is it about either your swing or your approach or just your aptitude for how pitchers handle you that's enabled you to be so successful swinging a power bat this early?
That's a good question. I just kind of go out there with a mindset of hunting the fastball and really trying to stick to that plan and letting all speed come and just react to that and just able to square balls up. I high school guy, I hit home runs and that's what the Braves asked me to do. We want you to be a guy that drives in a bunch of RBIs, hit some home runs. So just it's really focusing on driving the ball more than trying to lift home runs, and that trying to just drive balls, hit balls hard in the gap. It just leads to home runs, in my opinion, and I think that's the way how it's been.
And I just want to circle back before we let you go on something you mentioned earlier. You feel like defense is something that you're still working on and still needs some polish. What specifically about your game or your defensive game at the hot corner do you think still needs work? Because obviously, like Tyler mentioned, you've got the arm from the pitching experience to certainly work there. But what are you still working on in terms of sticking there and making sure you have a major league future at third?
Really, just polishing everything, whether it's footwork, whether it's, balls to the glove side, backhand, just really polishing up on, techniques, whether, it's catching a ball 2 hands to my left side or, that ball that's right outside my leg where I just catch it 1 hand or, a backhand that's a half backhand, whether I try to get around it or not. Just really the little things that, it comes with, reps and, experience, just a ton of reps at third and, really just trying to stay as athletic and mobile, as I can.
All right, well, we'll end on this one. We try to usually end on a fun question. So obviously you're calling us from spring training. The Braves spring training is still in Orlando. It's still at the Wide World of Sports. So be honest with us. How much do you get to go to Disney World, being at that park every day? And what is your favorite area of the park if you have been yet?
Well, I just got engaged this past off season, and she loves Harry Potter World. So I try to stay away from Disney World when she's not here, but whenever she is here, she loves Harry Potter World, and that's like that Harry Potter World. butterbeer and hogwarts, all that, the 9 yards. So that's what we do when she's here. But other than that, I stay away from it.
You can get lost.
That's the correct answer on
yeah,
all sides, I think.
It's like a labyrinth. You can get lost. Then we'll be hearing about Austin Riley went to Disneyland and now he's, somewhere in the Small World ride and nobody knows. It's all kinds of confusing.
For real. It's crazy.
Austin, thanks, man. This has been fantastic. Austin Riley, the 97th ranked prospect in the top 100 on MLB.com, MLB Pipeline, and the 6th ranked third base prospect in MLB Pipeline's top 10 going into the 2018 season. Austin, thanks for taking some time with us, and best of luck in big league camp and on toward opening day.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, guys.
Big thanks to Austin Riley of the Atlanta Braves organization, who you can find. He's a sporadic tweeter, but you can find Austin on Twitter. He is at Austin Riley 1308. And with that, we will pivot to talk about the business of minor league baseball. Benjamin Hill. Hello, Ben.
Hello, Tyler. You had an edge in your voice when you said my name there.
Enunciated.
What kind? Yeah, it was just enunciated. I'm trying to be clear.
Okay, that's cool. It just seemed like you were mad at me or something like that.
Just trying to make sure that people know it's an intense segment. They have to pay attention. Nothing is without suspicion, as Sam and I covered early on in the podcast today.
All right, good reference. I'll listen to it and I'll get it retroactively.
Yeah, exactly. So we have our latest food unveiling, one that is near and dear to my heart. The Omaha Storm Chasers announced yesterday, we're recording this on Wednesday the 21st, they announced on Tuesday the 20th, that they would be playing as the Omaha Runzas on June 9th this season, and Nebraska Twitter blew up with it. The food thing has taken off. Sam and I were discussing this a little while ago. Obviously, the food thing has taken off across minor league baseball. When you see it about something that you really get, it makes it that much cooler, which is how I felt about this. But this is a good one. It seems like it was very well received.
It was, and I mean, I think what you just said about things taking off because you get it. That's why this has been such a popular trend in minor league baseball. These regional food rebrandings or temporary one-night-only rebrandings are so popular because people, I think, are thrilled to see something that is not that is theirs become popular. It's not national, everybody knows it kind of thing. It's all about regional pride, and the Omaha Runzas is a very good example of that. I think that throughout the last several years of Mill team food promos, I've at least always known, I've always at least heard of the food item in question, even if I wasn't too familiar with it. And this is the first time that I just was like, what? A Runza? I've literally never heard of this. And, the team kind of had some fun with that during the day of sort of, in addition to getting a lot of hype for being the Omaha Runzas on June 9th, just being able to educate a wider audience about Runzas, which I believe are of Russian descent, and
I think they're German, from what I was always told.
Yeah, I mean, and there's different variations. I was doing some Googling yesterday. They're also not known as B-Rocks or Bi-Rocks in other places.
There's also pasties, which are, I know, in upper Midwest, like a Great Lakes area thing that's very similar to them. It seems like if you came from Central or Eastern Europe, you just stuffed meat and vegetables into like a dough pocket, and that was your meal.
That's what it is. It seems like cabbage is there's variations, but cabbage is a primary ingredient. Sautéed onions, meat, maybe cheese. If you look at the Omaha Runzas logo and what's appearing on the hat, there's definitely cheese in that. There's definitely some yellow, but I think they did a good job to the extent you can, showing a bread pocket broken open with things inside it. It's not the most easy thing to visualize, but now Runzas have gotten their due. I believe last week we were talking about Hartford steamed cheeseburgers. This week we've moved on to the Runzas, and of course it's #Home Runza.
That's a good tie-in, by the way.
The
hashtag Home Runza.
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
Well, one thing that was unique to me, and Tyler, maybe you can speak on this a little bit too, is that Runza, it's not just the food stuff. It's actually like a brand now. So they had to tie in this restaurant as well. They couldn't just say we're the Runzas and run with that. They have to have a tie-in with this restaurant, right?
Well, I'm not sure if they had to have a tie-in, but there is a restaurant in that region, in the Omaha region and elsewhere, but very much central to Nebraska, called Runza. And in addition to, I guess they're famous for their crinkle cut fries and hamburgers and typical fast food fare, but they also, of course, sell Runzas. So this promo is sponsored by Runza Restaurant. And so that's a good tie-in for the team, I'm sure, and I'm sure it's a good sponsoring opportunity to be the Omaha Runzas and pay homage to something that runs back centuries in the area in terms of people having an affinity for such a thing, but also tying it to a locally known business entity as well. I mean, it's all about those sponsorship dollars.
There are only 4, I think. Well, I shouldn't say I think because I looked it up in order to be this nerdy for this question. But there are only 4 Runza locations outside of the state of Nebraska. One of them is like 50 miles from here, and this makes me want to get in the car and go drive an hour and 10 minutes to go get a Runza. You guys, I feel like you need to experience them. I feel like if I go one of these days and track down some Runzas, I might just ship them out to you.
Please do, and make sure mine's gluten-free.
Okay, I will see what I can do. It's a Midwestern restaurant,
stuffed with gluten.
So I'm
just
imagining the extra gluten goes into Sam's. You need to get the gluten out of this one, just put it in the other one.
Yeah, it won't be a problem.
So congratulations to the Omaha Storm Chasers knee Runzas, who will be taking the field on, I guess it shouldn't be knee, that should be the other way around. Runzas knee Storm Chasers will take the field on June 9th at Warner Park in suburban Omaha as the Omaha Runzas in 2018. And with that, we'll move along. This offseason has been somewhat quiet, at least in terms of refreshes and rebrands and that type of stuff. But Ben's got a roundup of those things coming up this week, correct?
I do. This has become an annual tradition for me. In the 2015-2016 offseason, we had 10 rebrandings, either wholly new teams or at least new logos. Last year we had 9. This year we have 5. And so it's been very slow on the rebranding front. We've talked about that in other episodes, and but it's still my duty to do a rebranding roundup article now that Logo-vember turned to Logo-sember, turned to Loganuary, turned to Logrebuary, and there's not going to be a Logarch, I don't believe. So this is what we got: Hudson Valley, the Hudson Valley Renegades, the Augusta Green Jackets, the Gwinnett Stripers, the Tampa Tarpons, and the Greenville Reds are the 5 either new teams or pre-existing teams with new logos. So check that out on MILB.com for a recap of all that. I know a lot of you logo heads, logo fiends, as I like to affectionately call you, always want to be up on this stuff, and we'll have it all in one place.
Now, the fact that it's only 5, can you think of any reason why it was a limited number this year? Is it just random variants, or do you feel like teams are kind of settling in to their logos, their names, that whole thing, and teams are kind of opting not to rebrand now?
I mean, I just think that 10 and 9 in the last 2 seasons, that is, 19 teams out of 160. I'm trying to do the math right now. That's roughly 1/8 of the teams in a 2-year span. That's just not sustainable. To have that level of turnover in terms of new logos and new team names. So I was unable to discern a larger trend in terms of teams specifically saying we don't want to rebrand. I just think we had an incredibly busy time the last couple of years, and now we're approaching what is more likely to be a norm given just 160 teams and how many you can reasonably expect to be changing every year. But that said, we will have during the season probably, we have the Bowie's Creek Astros, playing their second and final season in Bowie's Creek, a temporary entity, but they will be announcing their name for when they move to Fayetteville in 2019. So we'll probably find that out during the 2018 season. In 2019, we're also going to have a new ballpark in Amarillo, and that team needs the name. And so on and so forth. It's minor league baseball. There's always going to be something, and we'll be all over it.
Well, in terms of a theme, I'll ask you this then. We do have Gwinnett, who changed from the Braves to the Stripers, and the Tarpons, who changed from the Yankees to the Tarpons. Do you feel like there's going to be a movement away from being branded specifically with the major league club, or is this just something that worked for these 2 teams?
I mean, I think in general, that's what we've seen for a long time, and that's what works for minor league baseball right now, is to have a unique identity from the parent club, but also in recent years, we've been talking, hey, is that not going to happen when we see teams like the Oklahoma City Redhawks become the Oklahoma City Dodgers, when we see the South Bend Silverhawks become the South Bend Cubs. There's always going to be movement in both directions, but obviously the movement this season and for many years, and what I expect to continue for quite some time to come, is unique identities, because you can brand your ballpark around a unique identity. You can sell merchandise with your unique identity. You're going to stand out in a crowded landscape with something that only belongs to you.
That is up on the site right now at MILB.com. There is the blog as well, bensbiz.mlblogs.com. You can follow Ben on Twitter at bensbiz. And is there, at this stage, I mean, we're still getting some promo schedules, but we're kind of getting close to being in the sort of cone of silence before the start of the season, correct?
We're still in, I think, pretty prime promo release season, but I think in the next week to two, almost all teams will have it out. That's really the two things on my itinerary right now, big picture, are putting my road trip schedules together, my road trip itineraries, and entering promo schedules into my master spreadsheet so I know what's going on when during the season. So working on that every day, and still a lot more to come on both those fronts, and we will talk about those things in the month of March, or maybe in late February, because next week we'll be taping on February 28th.
That's true.
And it's not a leap year, in case anyone didn't know. So March is coming very soon, and we're going to be talking about those things. The season. Tyler likes to always act like the season's around the corner, starting in November or so, but now even I am ready to admit it.
It is. I mean, they're literally in spring training now. By the way, I think you're out of luck with the gluten-free thing. So Sam will just have to tell you how good the Runzas are.
In very explicit detail.
Apologies. Yeah. They're quite good. I'm going to strategize how to buy and ship Runzas to you. And should be good. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Saying goodbye from episode number 148 of the show before the show. Thanks for tuning in wherever you found us. Next week, the final episode of February. And, minor leaguers across the board pretty well getting ready to report. And I don't know if you guys know this, but the season is just around the corner.
I thought you had gone pretty good in the episode. I don't think you said it before Bren
made it all the way through.
Brought it up. Yeah.
Made it all the way through, almost. It was Ben's fault. Blame Ben. # blame Ben. Yeah, what do you got going on? We finally do have some of our preseason kind of preview stuff starting to get rolling. That'll be coming up next week, actually, is when we roll out our first farm system rankings. And then those will be going through the first week of March. And then we start getting into, or not through the first week of March, through the last week of March. And then we start getting into prospect primers and all that type of stuff as we get closer to opening day. But we're getting toward off-season, preseason content, I should say.
Yeah, so next week, Josh will be doing position player rankings, and then the week after that, I believe, is Kelsey doing pitcher rankings, and then we have Alex Kraft doing something else with farm system rankings. Third week, we're still kind of hammering that out, and then I'll have our overall rankings the fourth week. But next week will actually be the last podcast before I head out to Florida, which is exciting. So
because the season is
almost here. Corner. Yes. But so next week we'll have a guest. It'll be like a normal episode, all that kind of stuff. But the week after that is when we kind of get into spring training extravaganza-ish time of year for the podcast, which I think is always fun and exciting. So I'll have an interview from Florida in 2 weeks, which is good. So I'll try to have to set something up. I think I'm going to be in Phillies camp and Yankees camp before the podcast goes up. So something from one of those two. And obviously those are two of the more interesting systems anyways.
Very much
so that'll be really good. Yeah.
It's going to be fun. Can't wait. Josh and I aren't heading to Arizona until March 17th. We'll have the Cactus League covered that following week, and we're getting excited. It's going to be a whole pile of fun. Get ready. All right, that'll do it for this week's edition of the show before the show. If you wanted to get in touch with us, podcast at MILB.com. Sam is on Twitter at Sam Dykstra, MILB, and I am at Tyler Mon. And that will do it. We'll talk to you next week.